All right, welcome to another episode of the Caffeinated Contractor. I almost forgot our name here. Caffeinated Contractor. Today's episode is if you are in the process of buying a house, and specifically a house that was just flipped and you're buying it from the flipper themselves, we wanted to make this episode to help you out so you can navigate through that process, because not all flippers are created equally. Now, before we start, I wanted to say this, and I've got my partner Pablo on with me today. He was on a prior episode. I can't remember exactly what we talked about that time, but anyway, Pablo is going to be on quite a few times. And what we're going to do today is talk about house flipping. But I'm sure, Pablo, you probably know quite a few good house flippers, right, who actually care about the product and the quality. And there's a lot of good house flippers out there. I know quite a few of them myself, so I don't want people to misinterpret what we're saying today as in we're putting them all in the same category, because they're not. There's a lot of great ones out there, but there's also bad apples in every industry. Even as contractors, whatever industry you're in, there's always bad apples. And there's also new beginners who think they can do everything themselves and may not have made enough mistakes to learn from them yet, and they made the mistakes on the house that you're trying to buy. So that's what we're trying to do today, is just kind of giving you some tools to help prepare yourself and some things to look out for when you're looking at a house that was recently flipped. So what do you think? Anything to add to that, Pablo, before we get started?
Like you said, it's two ways. I know a bunch of good flippers that they have the end client in mind.
Yep.
As far as like some people would decide to go with like a 2x6 wall and make the wall a little bit thicker, make it easier to run stuff, insulate it properly. Some clients will have tankless water heater or something like that, or the flippers will think about stuff that maybe the client down the line, instead of it just like pumping it out, hey, this is the next one, we're going to do it as cheaply. And I know that side too, is this, hey, we're going to just make as much money on this, and whoever buys it buys it. So there's things to pay attention to, when you are buying a house that that was renovated, and just the little things that will save you in the long run, when you're trying to purchase a house that that's been renovated by somebody. And they're good deals though, there are a lot of good deals on houses that have been flipped, that you're going to get the benefits of having new things in there and all that, even though let's say that it was an 80s house or a 90s house or anything like that. You're able to sometimes get those at a more cost-effective rate than if you were to go and try to buy a brand new house, with all the same stuff that's in there. That's, a lot of people, maybe not on the topic of flippers, but like people that even own their own house, they're kind of flipping, right, their own house to be able to save price instead of going onto the market and buying a new house.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So before we get into it, let's talk first about permitting. Now, not everything needs to be permitted. We're finding in some areas of the country that some cities want everything permitted, even if you're just going to rip up flooring and stuff, right? So, but I know permitting is going to be important, especially depending on the loan product that you have. Some loans want, for example, if it's a house where they added a room or whatever, but it doesn't reflect that on the tax records, the loan officer is going to want to see, hey, is this permitted or not? And you'll see this on Home and Garden TV, watching Flip or Flop. They'll run into an old house and like, oh, wow, this is an addition. And the big question is this permitted or not? So it's kind of a big deal. So make sure that if there's anything big like that there are permits and any additions are permitted. Any thoughts on that?
That's the very first thing, right? Is like when you go in, let's say that we're talking about, we're in the flipper's shoes, right?
Right.
And so we come in and we got to look at the house. They're going to look at to see what all permits and planning is needed. Is this a full gut? And we're redoing all these things. Some of them, the plumbing and all that's been so outdated that the meter needs updated. So you got to pull permits for plumbing and stuff like that to get that. And just be aware, if you are the flipper and you're watching our episode right here, and this is your first time possibly, it takes a long time. Permitting, like you said, is state, city, county. It depends on where you're at. So like, especially here in Houston, we have to deal, in some locations, we have to deal with the city and the county. We try to get away from not dealing with the city, because the city takes quite a bit more time than we do with just county on there. And it's definitely a process. You got to get your remodel permit or your building permit, and your mechanical, your electrical. Everybody pretty much pulls their permits off of when you first pull your building or your remodel permit. And that can be time consuming. When you do go and you're looking at a house that's been flipped, that is a good question to ask, I guess, is now, if you're not the flipper and you're the end client, you're the one purchasing the house, is ask them, hey, did you guys have to pull permits for any of this work, and consult with somebody, hey, if they did this and this and this to the house, did they need to pull permits or not? And if they didn't, then okay, they didn't do anything wrong at that point. But just be aware of that, when there's not, then it's not regulated, so they did whatever that they felt was needed at that time to be able to get that house to what it needed, So it's very important, and that's the key thing in the very beginning.
Yeah. So what I thought is what we can do is we can work from the outside in, right? So we'll talk about the exterior first, things to look out for, and then we'll work on the inside. So let's just start with the roof. Now for me, I'll just say like the thing that I hate, the thing that I talk about a lot is sometimes you might go to a place and you might see new shingles on top of the roof and you automatically assume, oh, it's got a new roof. But you don't know what's underneath that roof. Is it shingles on top of shingles, right? And I always say, don't put new product on top of old problems, because those old problems are going to resurface. Because if you have issues with the old shingles, more than likely you got leaks, which means your sheathing is probably rotted and soft. That needs to be replaced before you put new shingles on there. So if there's a new roof or requires a new roof, make sure it was done properly and they're not putting new product on top of old problems. Anything else on the roofing?
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Number one is like, if you're purchasing, whatever kind of home that you're purchasing, get an inspector, get an inspection report out there. Get somebody out there to look on there, get on the roof, some inspectors will get on the roof depending on what kind of roof it is, and some of them won't. But if not, then contact a roofer, have them look at that, I'd always, even if they say new roof, there's, key things to look at for, new roofs. Is like, does it have ridge vent? So ridge vent is like the cap that goes on top of where it meets like this.
Right.
They cut open a hole, helps it, the attic and your roof pretty much ventilate a lot better. So air is supposed to come in from if you have perforated soffits, so it's the holes, on the soffit that goes all along the perimeter of the house. Air comes in, cools the attic, and then comes out through your ridge vent. So that would be like number one to look at. Does it have a ridge vent cap on it? Number two, the one thing that I really like to look at, because even ridge vent, it's been out for a little bit. So even, then it's like, it's new, but it's not the newest thing. Right. Like for instance, when we do roofs, I like to have the drip edge. So the drip edges is like the black, it can be anything, black, stainless, galvanized steel, or whatever color that it comes in. They'll paint it eventually, but your shingles kind of go off of the roof, and you have your metal flashing, which is your drip edge that goes all along the perimeter of the roof. Before, they had where they put like 1x1 pieces of wood right there, and a lot of those, if you look at houses, it's rotted. A lot of it is rotted, and it's just either falling off, or they've installed the flashing on top of it. What we like to do is we'll take that 1x1 or 1x2, whatever the measurement of that trim is, all off. That way you don't have any rotting board behind your flashing, and it's put right there. So that's a newer kind of thing, that, I don't know if all the contractors are doing that, but I like to do that with our roofs. It's a little bit of extra work, but it makes it look a lot better, and it's more efficient as far as it's pushed tight up against your fascia board. And so that way you're not getting anything leaking in between, behind that. So, like we just went over, looking at another roof, was like your roof jacks and stuff like that. You may have a lot of, some roofers, they'll go in and they'll put new stuff. They'll tell you that there's new jacks on there, and they'll just spray paint the jacks, just to make them look nice. So those are some key things to look at for your roof, specifically when you're looking at that.
And for those who don't know what jacks are, what are those?
So roof jack is the actual pipe or vent that comes out of your roof. And normally it's covered by a boot, and the boot is slid on top of it, and then it's fastened to your shingles, and then it's caulked around, so that way, and that prevents any water going in from when your pipe comes out to where they had to cut the hole in your roof, so no water gets in.
Yeah, and that's a good area where leaks could surface, is just around those areas if they're not done properly, for sure. So that kind of leads into, and gutters really aren't a huge thing, but I like gutters, and it's weird to me when I see a house that does not have gutters, especially in areas where it rains a lot. But when they do put gutters on, and whether it be putting on the old ones, which I hate, but putting on new ones, I would say put on new ones because they don't cost that much. It's an expense, but it's not a huge expense. But when you put new gutters on, make sure that they're not putting it on rotted wood, the fascia, or the fascia board, right? It's not rotted, because if they put it into that rotted wood, as the water comes down and it gets heavy, it's going to separate. And as it separates from the house, that water is going to get in between the fascia board and the gutter, which is going to cause more rot.
Yeah. And then gutters overall, is like, so, if you are the flipper, you want to put gutters on a house, just it makes it look more, like you said, it's weird to see a house without gutters, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then also too, it's a preventative measure because it's diverting water away from your foundation. So, I know we're not on foundation just yet, but you keep a lot of water pooled up. You don't have proper grading, which is like, your dirt inclination towards away from your house. Water pools up against your foundation, and then that could be, not saying that it will, but it's a possibility to foundation problems in the future. So it's definitely in the best interest. And like you said, it's a cost effective thing to where, like, if it's a good flipper, they know that, like, hey, this is something that my end buyer is going to appreciate. And also then it's, preventative maintenance for me while I have the property still. And then also too, then for the client when they purchase it. And then as the client, of course, it's a preventative measure for you when you purchase that house, because you have your water diverted away. You're not worrying about, all that water sitting there. And it's done. Most clients, I think, when they're looking at houses, even if it is a flip house, like you're like, hey, let's look at these gutters. We're going to want to see gutters.
Yeah. Yeah. The thing that I always say is everything from the pitch of the roof down to the gutters, to the downspouts, any kind of drainage, the purpose is to push the water away from the house, the structure, the foundation, because the more water you have closer to your structure, the more damage it can cause. So, I would say make sure you have all those on there. Let's move on to siding real quick. So one thing that I've seen sometimes is putting lipstick on a pig. So just painting over the wood, over the siding. A lot of it's just wooden siding. But I would go up to it and I could just stick my finger right through the siding because all that wood is rotted, right? So whenever you have an area that's open on the siding, it creates an opportunity for moisture or water to get in between the walls, which is going to create a bigger problem over time. So you need to make sure that, all that wood rot is fixed. You need to make sure anything that there's a crack open or whatever, make sure they're sealed. That whole structure, the siding, everything needs to be sealed up. The purpose of that is to keep the elements outside of the house and not to bring it in.
Yeah. If you're looking at a house and it still has old fashioned, wood siding and stuff like that on the outside, you're going to more than likely, as the flipper, you're going to want to change that out. You want to use either, like a cement board, like a hardy board, exterior siding is most common, and cost effective to do that. It's a similar material to what they put on the walls inside of showers. Right. So from there, it's like, that's a whole thing of just preventing water penetration. Like you said, is any little hole, even if you replace the siding, you want it caulked properly. So that way it's sealed. You don't have any water getting in between the laps. And then they also have another product that, so you can, when you're looking at the house, you can ask them, what kind of siding is on the house, So, and if they're the flipper, they should know what material that they put onto that house, right? So if they use the hardy board or the newer product, it's a little bit more expensive too, but it's a smart siding. It's like an engineered kind of wood composite, like I don't know exactly all the makes of it, but it is for exterior surfaces. A lot of us are using it on soffits and soffit boards around the perimeter of the house. And that helps really well. But as the flipper, you want to do that. As a client, you want to make sure that it just wasn't painted over. That happens quite a bit. It's just like you said, just put some paint on it and make it look nice.
Yeah. And that doesn't work. It might look good in the photos for the MLS, but that's about it.
Yeah.
All right. So let's just talk before we go on the inside. Let's hit foundation. Now, the only thing I could think of for foundation, based on my limited knowledge, is I would just say get it inspected. For
sure.
Find someone who can do a foundation inspection and get it inspected and take their word for it. So, what kind of experience, what kind of thoughts do you have on foundations?
Yeah. So, I mean, you have your concrete slab foundation, right? So that's just a pure thick slab of concrete that you have that's got reinforced rebar, and it'll probably have like footers where your walls are going to be supporting, and stuff like that. Look around the exterior, see if there's any physical cracks and stuff that you can see from the outside. On the inside, you'll be able to kind of, if there's, we have one, we were just talking about it this morning, Chris, was, for the flooring job that we needed, but they needed to get the foundation fixed first.
Right. Yep.
So same thing with that is like, if you go inside the house, you'll notice if it has tile, the tile is going to be cracked up. Some of them are going to be popping up. There's going to see all that. So those are kind of visual signs to be able to see if you're the client going into the house. And then also too, if you're the flipper and you're looking at the house for the first time to inspect on whether you want to take on this project and make it livable for somebody else. Those are kind of things you want to look at. And then we also have the other kind of foundation would be like your pier and beam, right? So pier and beam is you have your wood, beams, your your joists that connect to your beams, and then you have your concrete piers that they put. And so it's either concrete into the ground, or sometimes they'll put cement blocks as well as what'll hold up the house. On those, you can, physically, normally they have like a skirt that goes around the outside, so you can take a piece off, and some of them are enough space to where you can crawl underneath it and kind of look, or even from the side, if it's not enough, you can look underneath it and see like, is anything bowing? Is there anything that looks like it's cracked or rotted? And even then too, is like to where our gutters and that was at, if you're on a pier and beam too, is you have water, pooling up underneath that creates all that moisture, and that moisture just stays in there. And so then it'll start rotting out all of pretty much your foundation. We've had some clients to where, they've had to install like a sub pump underneath there. So that way, anytime that it fills up, they're pumping the water out and it's staying dry as much as possible. But with pier and beam too, is the easiest. You can walk inside the house. And if you can feel, what I mean, all divots and stuff, then there's obviously problems that are like, hey, there's something, some people, maybe if the contractor goes in, they try to tell you like, oh, it's just a subfloor that needs replaced or anything. But it's like the subfloor sits flat, right? And if it's not supported correctly, if this is bowing, then it allows for the subfloor to sag down a little bit, right? So then it just makes sense that there's going to be some kind of foundation issues. It's not just a subfloor issue. So that's kind of on the foundation.
Exactly. If you are looking to buy a house that was remodeled, flipped, and you find foundation issues, don't let anyone talk you into, oh, you can fix the foundation easily. Or, we'll give you credit to fix the foundation, just buy the house. Well, if you fix the foundation, there's chances that you'll, all the cabinets that were put in might be cracked. The walls are going to get cracked. The flooring might be all jacked up, because the foundation needs to be fixed first before you start touching all the interior stuff, depending on how serious it is. But for the most part, foundation is really the first thing that needs to be done before anything else, because that could affect the entire house.
Yep.
All right. What about windows? I've glanced over that for a bit. What do you have to say about windows?
Windows, just look at them, and see. I mean, do they look like the oldest windows that you've ever seen in your life? I mean, if you see something in there that I mean, is like, I mean, some like they're just really old. It's a big thing. It's a big deal because of efficiency, right?
Yeah.
So keeping the heat out during the summer, what I mean, keeping the heat in during the winter time and stuff like that. Some guys will come through and they'll just caulk around the windows, which does help. That does definitely help, but older windows compared to the products that they have nowadays, you know what I mean? There's definitely more insulated windows now, to where, I mean, it is an expensive, windows are expensive. So that is an expensive line item when you're looking at, if you're the flipper and you're looking at your line items of your budget, like, I have this much for the roof, this much for windows, this much for this and all that. That's going to be one of your big tickets, depending on obviously how many windows are on the property. But it's a return of investment when the client looks at their utility bills every month. Electricity is going to be a little bit lower because of the efficiency of the windows. All that stuff plays a role. And the windows will give you, they're not exact, but depending on the window it has, it can tell you, hey, it'll save you this much, in your energy and stuff per year and stuff like that. And so definitely calculate, that. Now, if you want to buy a house and the house has older windows on it, just maybe like if you are the buyer and you're buying a flipped house, is, get a quote, from somebody on like, okay, I really like this house. Everything else is really good about this, but the windows are outdated. And I saw the Caffeinated Contractor and they told me to look at these windows. And so then from there, get somebody in there to come and look at it. And if you can get a quote, then you know how much you'd have to spend on that, but it would be worth everybody's time, especially the end buyer, to be able to have new windows.
Exactly. Excellent. So let's move on to HVAC.
Okay. So HVAC, yeah. I mean, so your AC, your air conditioner, and your furnace, that is something that when so if you are the flipper, at that point you're just kind of looking at, is how old is the unit? Was it sufficient? The SEERs that it has, which is a measurement of unit of the power that comes out. And then the how many tons is it, right? Yeah. So if it's a decently new unit and all that, then I mean you're good. There's not really I don't know the exact time frame on how long that AC unit and all that lasts. I forget it off the top of my head.
Yeah.
But if it's you go in and everything's good, the one thing I would say though is if you're the flipper and you're not going to replace the AC unit, let's say the AC unit is working just fine, at least, because you don't know if they ever have or the last time they've done it, but get the air ducts clean. It's not that expensive, but it's something that's worth everybody's time, including the end buyer, because you don't know how much junk that you get in your ducts and on the grills. It's not really like mold, but you got like a mildew that kind of grows up because of the condensation that happens from the cold air coming out, and then you have warm air in your house, so the grills sometimes will build up that mildew. Most of the guys that come and clean air ducts, they'll spray paint your grills back like white or whatever color it is, so then that's a plus too. And some of the times when they're cleaning, I'm pretty sure if I'm speaking correctly, is the condenser unit. They cut open because they clean the inside of it, right? And they'll put a door on it. So then for the next time that you ever need it, it's a little bit easier for that person to come in and connect to it and do what they need to.
Yeah.
And then for the end buyer, the client that's buying this house, definitely look at it. There's no problem with if the unit is working 100% fine, and it's not like a really, really old unit. It's still like maybe, let's say, middle-aged unit and stuff like that. It's not something that I would consider like a red flag, like don't buy that house because it's not a brand new AC unit,
Sure, yeah.
Budget for it, is like eventually, you're going to need to replace the unit. Yeah. So it'd be something like that. But obviously if you're the end buyer and it comes with a brand new unit, that is a plus for sure. Because now you have a full life of this unit for the time that you're in this house.
Yeah. And I would say if you're going in to look to buy the house and you see that the gutters, or not the gutters, what do you call it? The vents and, you see a bunch of dust. I'd say that's a good sign that there's, the attention to detail was not really a priority during the construction of this house.
Yeah.
So those are one of those small things that I would pay attention to, especially if you're the flipper, you want to present a good product to your end buyer on that. So
well, for sure. And then think about it is as the client, keep this in your head, right? Is like, if you see dirty grills and stuff like that too, I mean, did they really clean the property well after they did all the remodeling?
Yep.
Chris, how much dust comes up
Yep.
when you're demoing floors and doing framing and sheetrock and stuff like that.
Yep.
Well, if they have the AC running while they're doing all this work, let's say it's during the summer they're doing this, it's just sucking up all of that dirt. So then when the client moves in, then they're just inhaling all of that dirt that's still cycling through that system,
Yep.
But that should be like the final step, as we've done that when we've had we've helped investors and we flip, is from there we've done all our remodeling, and then the end thing is like our final clean, and then we get the AC, the air ducts clean, so that way, hey, we know that when we left site, like, this is clean, there's no dust in there, and everybody's okay. Because at the end of the day, you don't know who the end buyer is going to be in. What if they have like a child that's sensitive to really high on allergies, or like even one of the adults is like really sensitive to that stuff. Man, they move in that house, they'll think there's mold in the walls, they'll think that's all kinds of things, and it could have been just something that's very small, like just cleaning the AC ducts.
Yeah, exactly. Very good point. All right, so electrical. For electrical, some of the things that I've seen is that some of the houses I've seen had the old, standard Pacific panel still in there.
Gotcha.
If you look at that, I don't know. If I was a buyer, I would want a brand new panel. I want a panel swap. I want to make sure that everything that is running on the electrical is it's got the proper load on the panel, especially if there's a new addition. The old panels may not be strong enough to carry that load. So those are my thoughts. I think if I were to ever buy a house that was flipped, I would certainly want it to come with a brand new electrical panel. What do you think?
Yeah. I agree with you. I mean, I would prefer a brand new electrical panel, new breakers, all that stuff. So know that everything is in shape. Even if, let's say that they don't have that, if the box is not labeled, that's the number one thing that frustrates me when I go into a house and I don't know. We have to put a toner on the line and then try to track each one individually and label it ourselves. So like, if the electrical box isn't even labeled, then like the electrician did not do 100% of their job when they did that. Because how did he know everything was, right? How do you know that this switch connects actually to only these? And then did he jump from this one to other plugs and stuff like that? So is there too much on this? So a labeled box or a brand new box definitely is like a must, when you go in. The inspector will look at all that, but I don't think on the inspection reports that I've seen, I haven't had one that has come up with like the electrical box was not labeled. It would be like something else, like either the breaker wasn't working or there was a wire sticking out or something else. But having that labeled is so important for the next person and the end buyer. If they ever have an emergency or something and they need to shut something off, and they know exactly where they need to go to shut off to just there. And then let's see here. For electrical is, if they're flipping the house and stuff, you're going to definitely want, something with I've seen some pretty crazy stuff with electrical, like they don't put their joints in boxes. They just leave them in the wall. I mean, that's a plain out fire hazard, stuff like that. All your electrical stuff has to be in boxes. So in case of a flash or anything, you have like everything's contained, right? It's not a fire hazard, or short. I'm sorry. And I'm trying to think of what else as far as switches. Electrical. Look at your outlets and look at your switches. Are they like really old? They don't even match the color of all the new appliances and all that stuff. Yeah. The switches and the outlets are so cheap. I mean, the switches themselves, I want to say they're like 70 cents or 75 cents.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you're going to come in and you're doing a flip, I mean, it's in your best interest as the flipper. Like, man, just switch all those out, make them new. Because eventually I've had problems too where the switch stops working. So like you get all this work, your electrician's gone, you go through to final test everything, and then you're like, man, this switch doesn't work, and all that. And it's just swapping out the switch. And now your electrician has to come back out, probably charge you again for the work. And then from there, then replace all of that stuff. So
Yeah.
switches and outlets are important to see. And also too, is if you go into a house and you see the outlets are like really into the wall or really out of the wall and the plates don't fit and stuff like that, then you know off the off right from there, you know, like, man, these are like, whoever did this electrical is way off.
Yeah.
It should be flush with the wall. The plate should be able to fit on correctly, and things like that.
Exactly. So, for plumbing now, and I know you and I were talking about this earlier today, plumbing. Yeah, I don't want to steal what you said earlier. So go ahead, talk about plumbing.
About which part? Plumbing?
The plumbing, galvanized pipes.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I remember our conversations. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
if you're going into, if you're the flipper, you know, it's those galvanized pipes. We have a lot of trouble with them. They oxidate and they rust, you know, from once they get older, and then you get all that sediment and stuff that goes in the lines and stuff. So if you go into a house, you're a flipper and you see galvanized pipe, then you better price in a repipe, for the house and change it to PEX. That is your best, what you would want to do, you know, and that's saving you plus saving, you know, the client, you know what I mean, at the end.
Yep.
If you go in and let's say you see galvanized and you see all this stuff for plumbing, it's a possibility that everything could go right. And you don't have any leaks or anything like that. But imagine, I mean, for a flipper, you're spending a lot of money on putting insulation, on putting sheetrock, on putting floor, on putting cabinets. And then at the very end of it, you know, if you didn't replace all of that, and let's just say you're the one that got the bad luck, you have leaks coming from here and here. Now you just ruined everything, and all that money that you just put into this house is pretty much just like in the water, pretty much.
Exactly.
So it is definitely worth doing a repipe when you do have those type of pipes in your house. And then as the buyer, you know, you want to ask those questions, you know, was it repiped? What kind of plumbing does it have in it? The inspector will come through and he'll probably see if there's any leaks or if there's any, you know, any plumbing that was done not properly and stuff, and they'll mark it on theirs. But I don't know if they put on their details whether the house has been repiped or not. But that would be definitely in the client's best interest, is to ask, you know, what kind of plumbing does it have? Does it have galvanized? Does it have copper in it, you know, or is it PEX? Now, if it's PEX, then that's like, if you find a house flip and it's all PEX, they repipe the whole house, and you know that you're dealing with a good flipper. Because it was just a have to, you know what I mean?
Exactly. And these are the not so sexy parts of flipping, is the things that are necessary to keep the house, you know, safe from the outside or safe from flooding or fires or whatever, right? They're not the ones that, like, you can't take a picture of an electrical panel, put it on the MLS, and you get like, oh my gosh, look at that panel, I'm going to go look at this house, right?
That would make our job so easy, you know what I mean? Like, man, look how good we did on this electrical panel right here.
Exactly. It's not sexy, neither is plumbing, neither is roofing or anything, because it doesn't look good on the photos. But these things is what is going to protect the sexy stuff, the nice kitchen and the bathrooms and all that stuff. So make sure all those are set. Make sure they're all legit. Make sure that they're done right. And then once you feel satisfied with that, okay, let's move on to the inside and see if it's done correctly in the way you like it to. So let's just kind of touch on we'll touch on kitchen and bathrooms and then overall inside. So for the kitchen, you know, what kind of things that you think someone should take a look at or take into consideration when they're walking through a kitchen that's just been flipped?
Yeah. So, you know, kitchen is I would look at, you know, your stove, is it, you know, gas or is it electric? Just so that way, you know, what your costs are going to be, you know, that's just a maintenance type deal. You know, gas is going to be a little bit cheaper than an electric setup. And for your appliance wise, as far as like plumbing and stuff for the kitchen and that, definitely look underneath the sink. You know, does it have, I've seen some crazy stuff where like the P-trap is like at an angle. It's not even like, straight, you know, like this. And, I mean, all those things play a big role because it's proper flow and what the plumbing is actually meant to do.
Yep.
So that's something definitely to look at. In your kitchens, if it is a flip and you're going in and you're purchasing, or even if you're the flipper, I'm sure that they're going to look at it as well. If it has existing cabinets and stuff like that in there, then look at your kickboard. So look underneath it, like where your doors are at, and then it's your kickboard that's underneath. Look there to see if you have any water damage. Is there any previous water damage that you can see? Even if they painted over it, you'll still be able to see like if it's swelled or if something cracked or anything like that. Those would be signs of like, hey, there was a previous plumbing issue and all that here. So key thing definitely to look at for your kitchen. Is countertops, look to see if there's any hairline cracks in countertops. If you're the end buyer and it's already been redone, that all the work's been done, you shouldn't have any small cracks in your countertop. That was just an installation error.
Exactly.
But as far as kitchen, most important things that I would say is just check your range to see what you have and then just have it inspected. The inspector should be able to check everything to make sure you don't have a gas leak and you don't have, any kind of problems there. And then check underneath the sink and faucet to just make sure everything is connected properly and all that. And you never had any previous leaks there.
Yeah. Something that is minor, but kind of a pet peeve of mine. If there's gas available to the house and they have an electrical range, that to me, it's like, well, why didn't you just pipe in the gas and get a gas range to help out with the electrical costs here, right? Yeah. So it's minor. It's not a huge deal, but it's one of those small things for me. It's like, come on, what kind of expense are you trying to remodel this to the end buyer, or are you just trying to save some money here? So I know with flipping is a business and they need to make money. But at the same time, the service should be provided for the end customer. And for me, that's just a bit of a pet peeve, but it is minor, not a huge deal. And then one other thing that I was thinking about, so like for some things I've seen for backsplash, they'll put the tile up, but they won't put the schluter on the side, so they have the side of the tile exposed and it just looks really cheap and not done very well. And that to me is just an indication of attention to detail and makes me as a potential buyer wonder, gosh, what else did they just kind of do without really paying attention to it?
Yeah. Yeah, that definitely, those schluter pieces that make it look like a finished product, it's definitely worth it getting those.
Exactly. Okay, so let's move into the bathroom. It kind of same kind of stuff because you got water in there and electrical. So what kind of pointers can you give us for the bathroom?
For bathroom, if you're the flipper going in and you're inspecting the property in that, is if it has a bathtub, you're going to see, obviously if there's any leaks, is it caulked properly? Does the tile have grout missing to where water can penetrate behind it? Things like that, and I guess same thing too for the end buyer. You're going to want to make sure that all of that stuff is correct as well.
Right.
Normally when a bathroom is remodeled, and especially with us is all of our drops for our supply lines to that bathroom are cut and then we replace PEX down. So everything in the wall should be PEX. So if it is remodeled, they shouldn't have went back with copper. They shouldn't have went back with, galvanized. They should have went back with PEX. You can go back with copper, no problem at all. I personally prefer PEX for everything just because of the, I'm from Indiana, so up north they do a lot of PEX and all that because of the change in climate and temperature and all that, right? And now here in Houston and Texas, we're starting to get a lot more of that kind of weather where it kind of jumps up and down a little bit more dramatically than maybe it has in the past year. So helps with that. Your copper can still, burst. Your PEX can still burst. I'm not saying that it's perfect, but it's definitely a lot more, I guess, let's say like elasticy or flexible to be able to, for those situations where if something freezes in that line and it expands, it's not going to, bust right away or anything. It's going to be a lot better than that. The fixtures, make sure, they may have it installed the shower head and the valve and all that. But let's say they forgot to caulk it. So it's like all that water is penetrating behind that valve cover, that valve trim. And so now you don't even know it. You're taking your shower and that's not something you're paying attention to.
Exactly.
But all that water is filling up that wall. And then eventually you're going to have mold growth that's all behind it.
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
The only last thing that I would say the last thing on my mind was look at your baseboards. If the baseboards look swollen or if the caulking is like coming out, then at some point there was water that got there and touched that and it swelled the baseboards enough for it to come off the wall.
Yeah. Especially behind like the toilet. That's an easy area to miss. But look over there, see if you see stains or whatever, signs of water, because that's an area that we typically don't look at, unless we're really paying attention. A couple of things. I was looking at some photos on the MLS of a house that was flipped. And overall, it looked pretty nice. But the one thing that I picked out was the bathroom fan was probably a fan that was purchased in the 90s, maybe the 80s, that I've seen, in some of the stuff that I've done. And, I saw that. I'm like, gosh, they spent money on this nice tile, nice bathroom and flooring and countertops, but they didn't want to spend $40, $50, $60 on a nice bathroom fan to update that. You know what I mean? It's like those small things, like, come on guys, like, just take care of that as well. If it's new, then I know it's probably going to last me a while. If it's old, then I'm always going to worry about it going out on me. And the other thing is there is, you can, like for bathtubs that are kind of old and ugly, maybe they're chipped and they got stains in them, you can reglaze them. But my thought is reglaze them for rentals, reglaze them in apartment rentals. But if you're flipping a house to sell for top dollar, replace it with a brand new tub, because when you reglaze it, then it's not perfect, right? You have to, there's some certain maintenance that you need to do to protect the glaze on top of the old tub. And if you don't do that, then the old problems are going to resurface on top of that. So my thought is, if you're flipping a house for top dollar, make sure you're putting in brand new bathtubs.
Yeah, because even if you do, let's say that one of the spots of the bathtub is rusted out on the inside, you just can't see it from one side just yet.
Yeah.
If you reglaze it, refinish it, it's still you hit that spot one time, it's going to push straight through.
Exactly. All right, so we hit the outside, we hit the big ticket items on the inside, the sexy stuff, which is the bathroom and the kitchen. Anything kind of on the general side on the interior that you would recommend? I know the baseboards, look for swelling. What else?
Drywall, if there's any cracks that go diagonal or anything like that, that could be the house is shifting or is moved or anything. And if it's a fully renovated house, it just got renovated, you shouldn't have any of that.
Exactly.
Let me see here.
I would say for me, I would say make sure all the lights are matching and they're new and they're not just using old existing lights. That's kind of a big deal for me anyway.
Yeah. Insulation too. So if you go up into the into the attic space and stuff and you see it's the same old insulation, they just repainted the ceiling and textured it, but they didn't change it or anything like that, then that's another thing too. So if you don't have the proper insulation or it's old insulation, it needs to be new. So if you're the flipper, you need to go ahead and take care of that. If it's needed, and then from the end buyer, go up there and look at that, or in the inspection report, it should have that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, no house is going to be perfect. There's always going to be issues. Even new construction, there's always issues too. Home inspectors always find something wrong with a new construction, but that inspection report's important. Make sure you get that inspected. And my thought is, if you go into a situation where a house is being flipped and you're looking to buy it, if you feel a little bit unsettled, pay attention to that. Maybe there's something there. Maybe you should just kind of keep your options open and find something else. But if you're looking at it, you're like, gosh, this looks legit. All these things are checking off just fine, and you feel great about it, go for it, because there are a lot of good flippers out there that do produce good quality work, use good contractors, and they're legit. So don't be afraid of it, but also just make sure you can keep up your guard and watch out for yourself.
Don't be afraid to ask questions.
Exactly. Exactly. If you need to get one of your good contractors out there that you trust to go take a look at some things, that might be a good option as well. But, cool, man. Well, anything else? I know that's kind of short, 45 minutes. I mean, we could talk about house flipping and a lot of the stuff to look out for, but high level, I think that was pretty good. Anything that you can think of that you want to add to that?
No, I think that was it. We went over the trades, the specialty trades. We went over exterior, interior stuff.
Yeah.
So, those are the important things of looking at when you're looking at flipping a house.
Exactly. Yeah. So we'll be hitting on a lot of different topics, and a lot of different tips and whatnot when going through situations like this. So stay tuned, subscribe, all that good stuff. Give us a rating to help us out. Share this with someone who's looking for a house, or maybe even a flipper who is new and they're looking for some tips. If you're in the Houston area, check us out, Elevation Construction Team. Fill out the form. We'd love to talk to you, whether you're buying a house and looking to do some work, or you're a house flipper looking for a contractor. We can help both of you guys out. But anyway, thanks for watching, and we look forward to doing some business with you.